In a world where hustle culture collides with wellness warnings and workplace demands keep evolving, how do we stay sharp without burning out? How do we navigate the endless stream of wellness trends while actually getting results? This is the Work and Wellness Podcast, and I'm your host, Angela Davies. Drawing from my own journey of wins, stumbles, and honest revelations, I'll be bringing you raw, unfiltered conversations with experts and inspiring guests who've been there, lived it, and found a better way. Together, we'll cut through the noise and workshop what it really means to be well in today's workplace. No more choosing between success and sanity. No more sacrificing health for achievement. Whether you're struggling with burnout, searching for purpose, or simply ready to work smarter, not harder, you're in the right place. This is real talk about real solutions for real people. Let's get into it. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Work and Wellness Podcast. In this episode is probably one of the most important topics I think that we can address. And it's a topic that I've really previously struggled with. And it's focused on one word, two letters, no. A lot of us struggle with this word. I know as a recovering people pleaser that saying no can be really hard, and it can feel like you're being harsh or mean or like you don't care when you say no. But today I'm going to share with you why saying no is hard from a psychology perspective, how constant yeses can lead to burnout, how if we say yes to the wrong things and spend too much of our time doing things that don't align, we're actually blocking ourselves from doing the things that really matter and light us up. How saying no can actually improve our performance despite what we might think, and why saying no is the ultimate act of self-care. And I'm going to give you some really practical sentences that I use that are extremely effective for saying no, and it stops you from feeling guilty when you do say no. So let's get into it. Why do we feel guilty saying no? This often actually develops from childhood as a survival mechanism, which is really interesting. We often say yes because children who receive conditional love learn that meeting others' needs guarantees acceptance. And from an evolutionary standpoint, we all want to be accepted into our family, into our tribe, into our friendship groups. From a neurological perspective, people pleasing and saying yes triggers dopamine and oxytocin release. So dopamine is the reward chemical. It creates a temporary high of pleasure and motivation. And oxytocin is the connection chemical. So it's that warm feeling of being liked and accepted. So when we say yes, those chemicals are released. The cycle goes a little like this. We say yes. We receive a positive reaction from the person we say yes to. Dopamine and oxytocin release. The brain registers that this is safe and rewarding, and it unconsciously reinforces that behavior. So that is how we get caught in this cycle of saying yes, because it feels good, it feels warm and fuzzy at the time. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't feel good when we realize actually that wasn't the best thing to say yes to. On top of that, our corporate hierarchies reward overwork, and they make no or saying no feel really risky. This is why saying no is so hard. And a 2021 Gallup study actually found that 76% of employees experience burnout, and people pleasing and lack of boundaries were a significant contributor to that burnout. So there becomes a ripple effect when we say yes to everything, and it negatively affects our productivity on the most meaningful and important things in your life and work. So when we're saying yes to things because we can't say no, we ultimately lack productivity on the things that are actually really important for us to be doing. And we're just saying yes and crowding out our days doing things we really don't want to do. Saying yes also leads to overwork, and that can negatively impact work relationships because we've got less time. And let's be honest, when we've got less time and we're more stressed, we can be a little bit snappier with our work colleagues. I know I've been guilty of that in the past when I've said yes to too many things. I've definitely been much snappier with my team. And ultimately, this can really impact our mental health as well because we feel overwhelmed and it feels relentless. Saying yes to too many of the wrong things also blocks our ability to say yes to really aligned work when we aren't saying no to the things that aren't aligned or don't feel right. So, call it woo-woo or not, but I really believe that when we say no to things that aren't aligned with us or aren't a priority from a work perspective, we allow space to be able to say yes to the really cool things or the great work that lights us up when it comes our way, rather than having to say that we don't have capacity for it. Ultimately, the truth is that saying no increases performance because it means we give the most important work our full energy and focus, and it leads to better outcomes. So I've covered sort of why it's important to say no, the impact of saying yes too much, but how do you actually say no? And I think this can really be the hardest thing. We know that it is good to say no in certain circumstances, but the question is, how do we do it? What are some really practical ways that we can say no and it not feel like we are being lazy, that it's confrontational, or that we're being, unwilling to compromise or difficult? So I've got 3 different ways you can say no. They're actual sentences that you can use from a work perspective, and then 3 different ones from a social perspective as well. I think social is just as important as work, but ultimately all of these will improve your performance at work because you'll have the energy and focus. So saying no to a new project, a sentence that I have used in the past that really works. Thank you for thinking of me. Looking at my current commitments, I won't be able to give it the time and energy it deserves. I want to ensure all my work meets high standards. Can we revisit this again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month when I have more capacity? So you're thanking someone for thinking of you for the project. You're letting them know that you really care about your work and you want to do a great job, and that right now you're not able to do that, but you do want to be thought of again in the future. So thanks for thinking of me. Looking at my current commitments, I'm not going to be able to give it the time and energy it deserves. I want to ensure all my work meets high standards. Can we revisit it again in the future? It's a really good one. You're saying no without feeling like you're shutting the door on future projects. This is one of my favorite ones, to a meeting. Certainly when I worked in banking, my entire days were filled just with meetings and meetings and meetings. And often I would think, God, what was I even doing in that meeting? It just didn't even make sense for me to be there. So a really good response to not attending a meeting. Of course, there are some meetings that we will have to attend, but there are some that are really superfluous to our day. So my response used to be, thanks for the invite. Looking at the agenda, I'm really not critical to the discussion. Could you please include me in the meeting notes and I'll review them afterwards? Super simple, super easy, really matter of fact. And I don't know about you, but certainly when I've had meeting invites come through in the past, there's often not an agenda. So it does force the person to put an agenda in place or say, before I accept the meeting, could I see the agenda, please? And it just allows us to discern whether that's the meeting that we want to be in or not. And then the final one is to after hours work. I'm not saying say no to it all the time. Sometimes we do just have to roll up our sleeves and do a bit of extra work after hours. And then when the times are less busy, you can sort of be a little bit more lenient with your hours. But sometimes it does really overstep the mark. And so what I would say to that is I understand this is a priority task. However, to maintain work quality and avoid burnout, I really need to protect my evening recovery time. I can prioritize it first thing tomorrow and have it to you by noon. So I don't know how many of you might have experienced this. I think probably a lot. I certainly did, leaders texting us or emailing us expecting work to be done. And that email might come through at 6 p.m. and they're wanting it for first thing in the morning. And it's just not reasonable to expect that people have time in their evening every single time. Now, again, as a one-off, I don't think it's such a bad thing. Like, I do think there's got to be give and take in work. That's my view on that. But I think if this is something that's creeping in all the time, setting that boundary really firmly is really important. Now, what about from a social perspective? To a weekend event, I will say thank you so much for the invite. I am running on empty and I need the weekend to recharge. I'd love to catch up on X date when I've got more energy to be present. Now, I think it is honest and I think it is sharing where you're at. It's really important from my perspective that you then do follow up with a catch up following that. So to say, look, from here on out, this is when I'll be free and I'm going to book a catch up with you. Otherwise, it can feel like you're shutting someone down. So I do think it's important that when you're saying no, you then follow up with when you can catch up. I feel like there's nothing worse than making an excuse. If you don't want to do something, I feel like we're all adult enough just to say, I don't want to do it. No one needs to make excuses for why they can or can't do something. I think just be honest from an energy perspective. To a favor. Now, this is really hard because I know we always want to help our friends, but sometimes we are not in the energetic or mental state to be doing a favor for someone. So a really good response to this is, I really care about supporting you, but with my current commitments, I just can't give this the energy it needs. Could we brainstorm some other options or other people who might be able to help now? I think this is a really nice way to say it because you're still helping this person with their solution. You're still helping them to get to the outcome they're looking for, but you're not taking on the need to do the favor if you feel like you really can't right now. And it still feels like you are being considerate without depleting your energy. And then the final one is saying no to last minute plans. Now, I don't mind a last minute plan from time to time, but sometimes you really just don't feel like doing it. And so a really good response to that is, I appreciate you thinking of me. I've learnt the need to protect my downtime for my well-being. I'd love to plan something in advance for next week or the next time when I can fully engage. So you're saying thanks for the invite. I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I do need to prioritize my well-being so that I can be fully engaged next time. Again, I think honesty is really the best policy here. I think too often we make up excuses. Everyone knows it's an excuse, let's be honest, and it just feels kind of rubbish when you're giving the excuse because you're feeling inauthentic, but also the person receiving the excuse knows it's an excuse and it just doesn't feel great for them either. Those are 3 practical ways from a social perspective, 3 from a professional perspective that you can use that can make saying no a little bit easier and it doesn't feel as daunting to sort of say no in that way. I think it's really important to have a couple of practical things in the bank. I do want to acknowledge though that saying no can feel hard and it can feel a little bit icky and just like there's a little bit of friction when you're saying it. But when you say it more and more, it does start to feel easier. And I really do think people respect that. There is nothing more I love than when my friends say no or when I'm doing work on a project for a business and they say no to something for those sorts of reasons. I just think it is so great. I wanted to share some really good resources that can help with this because I think sometimes extra resources can just really help us solidify it and things from a different voice can sometimes sink in. So a couple of books that are really good. There's one called The Disease to Please by Harriet Baker, which is a great one that tackles all things people pleasing. And then Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab. Both of those ones are really about how you say no, stop people pleasing and set boundaries. And I wanted to leave you with a quote from the last book that I just mentioned. And that quote is, "Boundaries are not selfish. They're self-preservation. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions about your boundaries." How powerful is that? It's a nice little quote to leave you on today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've got something out of it. And I really hope that you are better able to say no from here on out. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining me on Work and Wellness. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, someone in your network might need to hear this too. Share it with a colleague or friend who could use these insights. I'd love to keep the conversation going, so find us on Instagram at Mind Your Grit, where we share daily tips and continue these discussions. And if you found value in today's episode, please take time to rate and review the show. It makes such a huge difference and helps other people discover conversations they might really need. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Each week, we're building a community of people who believe that success and well-being go hand in hand. You can find the notes, resources, and links from today's episode at mindyourgrit.com. This is Work and Wellness with Angela Davies. Your work matters, your wellness matters, and this is where it all comes together. See you next week.